All right, we're back. We are COMP397, and it's the fall 2017 semester, and it's week 8, part 1 of our broadcast, and it's animations today. How to do animations with Create.js. All right, well, I don't have my Create.js project because I'm using a PC today, not a Mac. So I'm going to go up onto GitHub, and I'm going to go to Centennial College. And I have my COMP397 mail pilot demo, this one here, that's been forked. This is bad, right? But let's just go and grab it from me, because I think I put it there too. So I'll go grab it from there. Also public, and I'm going to go to repositories. This should be one of the last ones I did, this one. Okay, so I have a problem. I don't have it. So curious, I want to ask you this question, because this is review today, right? And you're going to need to do GitHub for your little game you're going to do in a couple weeks, like in-house. So if I just download, do I get my commits? Yes or no? If I just click the download zip button, do I get my commits? No. How about you guys? You think yes or no? No. 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 Definitely not. It's a package. You get a package, a zip file. If I clone, that's different. But if I just download, no, you get nothing. So let's just download the zip file for now. Oh, actually, no. Let's try that again. I'm not going to download the zip file, although I did it. Let's just go into this. I'm going to copy this. There we go. And I want to start off a command prompt. Right, here we go. And I want to go to my desktop. There we go. And I want to say Git Clone. That's how we do it. So if you're going to, let's say a friend, your partner does some stuff and you want to download the repository, as an example, you're going to Git Clone and you're going to use the Git repository information to clone your Git project on your desktop. So what this will do, and I'll keep this open for a second, because I'm going to go into my desktop. So if you look at what I downloaded, this is COMP305. Where the hell did it go? It's probably went over here. Yeah, here it is. I get this. I get this stuff here, right? So I'm going to go CD space and then drag and drop to this, right? There we go. Doesn't matter where you do it from. And now if I go dir for directory, I can get a listing of everything, all my files. So this is where all my files are. I want to keep this open because I want to do a couple things with it, right? Now remember what we did last time. We used light server. I like that. I think it's good. So remember I installed light server with npm. So I said something like npm install light-server and then -g. And then what that'll do is it'll install a little server that's local that you can run, because some of the files we're using requires the use of some kind of small server, right? So I'm just updating my light server so it works. That's all I'm doing. You don't have to do this. Also, I have to also report that lately Webpack and Yarn have starting to take the place of Bower. Bower is going to go bye-bye eventually. And, well, it's happening, right? I mean, they always move things around, right? But it's very good. Yarn, I have to say, is very good. I've checked it out. It's not a big deal, but we're pretty good. So if I actually do inside my mail pilot demo, if I do a light-server now, I should be able to run the demo like we had before, right? So start, right? Yay. This is what we had before. Yay. Ooh, that's loud. Okay. So yeah, that's what it does, and that's what we did last time. So we ran this little server kind of thing, right? And that's what we're going to do now. Okay, cool. I'm also working with the latest version of Visual Studio Code, which is now blue, right? So if you don't have the blue version of Visual Studio Code, right? Oh, look, it even says code for 64-bit Windows now available, right? Let's learn more, right? Let's do this together, because you're going to have to download this stuff anyway, right? Notice that there is a stable Windows 64-bit installer. So why would I want to run a 64-bit version of my code or my stuff instead of this version? Is there an advantage? Yes, speed, right? compilation, all that stuff. For now, though, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to tell you that it's available. If you want to run it, it's not going to screw me up or anything like that, right? But if you wanted to, you can just download the installer, right? So I'm going to show you where it is. So here it is. Put it in my downloads, okay? And then you can install it side by side. It shouldn't take the place of this one, Hip Hop Dancing. This is my HTR file I was using yesterday. I got to show you some interesting stuff if we have a chance later on. But yeah, so I can always run this thing, and it shouldn't replace my VS Code. Notice that it is blue. Okay, I can't run by side. I thought I could. No, I will not uninstall my 32-bit version. Thank you, not today, right? Anyway, so it's blue, yeah. So blue means that it's been updated. If you don't have the blue version, as an example, that would be bad, right? And again, you can always check for updates and see if you need an update, right? Now it says mine will update now before I continue. And I definitely want to update to the latest version, because if I don't, you know, there might be some stuff that's been fixed or whatever that I want to make sure it's fixed now. Other things, when you're migrating to a new system, remember what we needed. We also want the latest version of TypeScript on your machine, right? So if you check TSC-V, my latest version is 2.61, right? So if you don't have 2.61, it's a good time to upgrade. And if you look at the TypeScript website, typescriptlang.org, you can see that we're at 2.6, or whatever the version is. It's 2.6 something, right? And if I click download the latest version, it's going to tell you different ways of downloading it. We use npm, of course, npm install -g TypeScript. Let's do that together. It's not going to hurt me. If I already have TypeScript at the latest version, it's not going to hurt me to increase it. So npm install TypeScript -g. -g. Right, cool. So I've got my, I'm not going to do this now. I will not be lured from, you know, you terrible Visual Studio Code. All right, so let's just close that off. Okay, cool. So it was already a 2.61. That was the latest version. You downloaded and installed 2.61. Why am I updating TypeScript? Because Visual Studio Code and TypeScript go very well together. And if you have an older version of TypeScript and a newer version of Visual Studio Code, it could cause problems. So just please update. Not necessary, but I recommend it. Okay, cool. Plus, it's good to keep up to date. And there's no breaking changes, just more features, which is a good thing. All right, so that's cool. That's a really good thing. We've got this going. We know it runs. Let's download or drag and drop them. Open up my Visual Studio Code now, which is the latest version, right? The 32-bit version is the latest version. And I can just drag and drop my COMP397 F2017 folder into here. Remember? All right. So what did we do? What did we build with this project so far? I think it's important for us to recall the project structure a little bit. One thing we know is this. Inside our .vs code folder right here, right, you can see that there's a task runner, right? And if you don't have this task runner, that would be bad. What this task runner does is it allows us to transpile. And we press Control-Shift-B to do that on a PC. So Control-Shift-B, and then we can transpile. And what it does now, because I've got this little task runner, it automatically transpiles from TypeScript to JavaScript every time I save. You need to have this ready to go. If you can't do this with your project that I'm running right now, please download the latest version from GitHub. All right. I've structured it very similar to Unity, if you notice. I have assets and scripts. We have node modules. Can't get away from those because we have @types. And when we move into Yarn, next time I do this course, I'll be using Yarn instead of Bower. It'll be node modules. That's where everything will be inside here. So there will normally there won't be another scripts lib file anymore like we have right now with all our easel.js and everything else. It'll be strictly node modules where everything will be in, right? That's what will happen eventually. So node modules contains all of our type hinting or type declaration data for TypeScript. So it allows us to use create.js packages a little easier, right? In our content, we have our game.css, which is minimal. We just added in a custom font, doc51, which we did together before we left, right? We did this thing. And in our assets, we have audio files as well as fonts and images, a bunch of images, this bitmap file, which we're going to work with today, and sprite sheets, right? And we talked about how to combine our sprites into sprite sheets for better loading and for more efficient use, okay? So if you look at our scripts now, this is the key area that we've been focusing on over the last weeks we were together before. Remember that our core folder has a bunch of scripts. One of them is the one we care about, the game.ts script. And we have two things. We have this asset manifest. And what this asset manifest does right now is it loads the background ocean graphic as well as our audio sounds, our audio files right here. And then we have this texture atlas. Remember we made the texture atlas with Texture Packer? And the texture atlas has the frames of our animation as well as the names of our animation right now. And they're not really frames or names. They're just the names of our sprites. So bullet, cloud, island, plane, the restart button, and the start button, they're all sprites right now for us. Okay? We're going to add some more today, which means this data, this frame count is going to change. Also notice, remember that before, we modified these last three this last part of code because Texture Packer, what it does is it kind of puts offsets in here. We don't want those offsets for our game specifically. Okay. We broke it down into our main game in a couple of functions. One, the main function, right, or this init function is called when the window loads. The window loads, as an example, and when the window finishes loading, it calls the init function. We need to do this a little differently in JavaScript compared to things like C# and Java or even C++ because we do not start at the main function. We start when Windows finishes. And we don't want to start at main because we want to preload everything first before we get to main. That's what we're doing. Now, we could do that in another way. I don't have to start like this. I don't have to have an init function. I could have main call the init function, and main could be the main function. But I prefer to do it this way. You may have another structure. So we preload everything here in the init function. And once this init function is done, it calls the start function. That's what it does from here. So when the assets are ready to be done, and this is very interesting that it's actually showing me some fixes. What is it fixing? That's awesome that Visual Studio Code allows that now. That's like really cool code hinting. That's free. Wow. Okay, I never had that before. Anyway, so it calls the start function when it's done loading the, well, like we said, the audio files as well as the big background, right? Then, when in the start method, right, what it's doing is it enables the canvas, right? It kind of makes a reference to the stage object, and then we enable mouse over events so we can actually do some buttons if we have a button. We can do hover events with the buttons. We have a we talk about the frame rate. We initialize the frame rate for create.js, which basically says we're going to try to run at 60 frames per second, and then every update, every tick, every frame, or every delta time, basically, what's going to happen is we're going to call update every frame. All right, there's our update, and then here's our update function. Right, so this runs asynchronously, right? So it's not in order here. We just, as soon as we do this, this is literally like an event. So it runs in its own event thread, right? And that means this update function is continuously running over and over again, like an endless loop, right? And that's our main game loop, and that's what this thing is. So I'll make that one. That's kind of one thing we're missing is comments. So I'll say this is our main game loop, because that's really what this is, right? So our main game loop will keep running over and over again until somehow we break out of it, right? Okay. Then we set the current state. Remember, before we left, we also set up a state machine that allows us to move from one screen to the other screen. That's what we did, right? And what we're able to do is inside the update function, we check to see what our current scene is. And if our current scene is switched, then we go down to main, as an example, We call main again, and main allows us to switch our scene from the start to the play scene to the end scene. Okay? And that's what happens. We're also using another container. One thing I don't know if you noticed, is we have another container called game. So we have our stage and our canvas. That's nice. But then further down the line, we want to set up the game scene itself. And the game scene is actually, we're inventing or creating a new scene. That's what we're doing. And it's actually called the start scene, right? The start scene. So if you notice up here, we have our stage and canvas and asset manager and all this kind of stuff. But somewhere down the line, we have our current scene, which is objects.scene. We set up this right here sets up this size or the shape of our scene, whatever it's going to look like. And then we actually instantiate our scene right here. And this is where we create a container for the scene. We created a scene manager. That's what we did, or a scene, because this is going to be, these are all scene graphs now. So if I could take a look at scenes, we have 3 scenes, our start scene, our place scene, and our end scene. That's what we've done. And we switch between them. This is what we call a finite state machine from here on, this little switch statement, right? Allows us to switch between states, right? And that's where we're at right now, okay? Pretty much. Every scene is encapsulated. So if I look at the start scene, you can see that it's a class, and it has access to the asset manager, the text atlas, and all this other stuff. It does a lot of setup, and it has its own start method and its own update method. And each scene's update method gets called inside the game's update method. So if you look at the game's update method, we're updating the scene. Whatever the scene is, we keep updating. So every frame, we keep redrawing the scene over and over again. Okay? That's what we're doing. So this is the way we're switching between scenes. So really our game.ts is the control state. It's our main file that we enter, and we kind of branch off from there. Okay, wonderful. We got this stuff going on, and what I want to do now is talk about animations. So what do I mean by animations? Well, let's take a look at the desktop for a second. There's our desktop, and I have my scene, which is in COMP397. And inside this folder on the desktop, I have some assets. Here's my images. And I have this old 1945 bitmap. Remember? Here's our 1945. Let's open this up with, I'm going to open it with Fireworks. Let's see if it opens with Fireworks. Yay. I also have Fireworks on the PC. Right? I'm an Adobe subscriber, so I have the same kind of applications everywhere. And what I have is a couple things, right? Notice that I have 3 planes. Here are the 3 planes. 1, 2, 3. I also have these other planes, right? Then I have these other planes. These are planes that I have that I can use for my enemy. And my idea today is a couple things. I want to create some new assets. So we're going to do some asset creation today. I want to get my new planes. So the 3 planes that I have, this is different states. Notice that the propellers are a little different for these planes. This is plane 1, plane 2, and plane 3. And I want to have my propellers move, right? I want to do that. We'll do that first. And then we'll get the explosion working. Right, here's the explosion, right? So whenever I hit a cloud, I want the explosion to go off, okay? So how do I do this? So a couple things. What's the problem with this sprite sheet? What would you say? Max, what do you think the problem with this sprite sheet is? Come on, give me your opinion. Is there a problem, first of all? That? Background is blue, right? That's a problem. Even though our ocean is blue, it's not this blue. Can't put a blue background on the sprite because otherwise it'll be a blue square that floats around, right? So that's the problem. We have to remove the blue background. And there's a couple ways to do this. In Fireworks or Photoshop or Krita or GIMP, you may have some access to some kind of magic wand tool. Okay, the magic wand tool basically allows you to select pixels, right, with different colors, right? So picture elements. So pixels are picture elements with different colors. So, and they have a different tolerance. Notice my tolerance right now is 32. So if I click this image right here, and if I zoom in, okay, I want you to see something. Is this right, what I want? Is there some stuff that I don't want? Take a look. Take a look at the work I have to do to get this image. Now, I want you to do this with me, guys. I know some of you may say I'm not an artist, but it's okay. It's great practice for you to do a little bit of pixel manipulation. That's what we're doing today to get this the way it's supposed to be. Okay? So what we're supposed to do, notice that this plane here has the propeller with a gray on this side and white on this side. And if I scroll down, there is gray on the right side and white on the left side. This creates the illusion of the plane switching its propeller, right, back and forth. And then there's the gray state, where there's both on both sides. It's like this. Okay, this is actually the plane we're using right now. Okay, so we want to replace this plane, and this plane with our current plane. Our current plane has got to go, right? So I'm going to kind of click this, making sure that everything's good. I can also shift click areas that I don't want to include in my selection, right? So I want to kind of include all those areas. And then what I can do is inside of Fireworks, I can press delete, and it'll get rid of those areas. Now, it's not perfect. Do you notice that it's not perfect? Take a look at these blue areas right here. That's not right, man. Not right at all. Let's undo that change. So how do I change that? Because I want to make it better than this. Well, you can change the tolerance. So right now the tolerance is 32. If I make the tolerance 60, not a lot of change. How about the tolerance at about 120? Some more over here. Notice that changed. But still here we got more. How about 160? Right? More. How about 200? It's going to be an area where, that's not bad. There's going to be an area or time when we don't want to do it anymore. Right? By the way, notice how even the shadow's gone now. So we could do this in a multi-step process. Let's go back to 160, where the shadow is still there, but we still got a little bit of remnants. And let's go step up slowly from there. 170, and usually it's around 180 when things get funky. Yeah, so maybe 175. This is just a tolerance, a value that we kind of say, okay, well, how close does the colors have to be, before, yeah, it's 170 usually. So that's the breaking point, 170. Where the colors have to be close enough where I'm gonna cut them out. All right. So I cut them, and then I got some cleaning up to do if I want. I don't want. All right. But if I wanted to, I could clean up the rest of the plane like this, slowly, slowly. And I can do each one. I can do this one, and I can do this one, and I can clean up all those planes. Luckily for us, I already have those planes, right? If you look at our assets, you have them, plane 1, plane 2, and plane 3. I'm not going to make you go through that today, right? I can show you how to do it, right? But it would just take a long time, waste a lot of time, right? So those 3 planes are the ones I want to use. Likewise, I also want to do the explosions. Okay, let's take a look at the explosions. So I got the explosion, stuff down here. Now this stuff I don't have. So this stuff we're going to have to do. These explosions. Okay, here's the explosion. So here's one explosion. Now notice again, if with a tolerance of 170, it seems to be about right. FYI, it captures all of them all at once, right? Well, why does it do that? I don't know if I want to do that over here. And hear me out when I say this. Take a look at the stuff that I'm losing over here. I'm losing some data with 170. If I go down to maybe 160, right, then what ends up happening is I don't go from one place to the other, but it still cuts this area. Why did it go? Because this gray wall is, if I go to 170 for tolerance, it includes that too. Let's cut that out, right? And it bleeds over. Actually, no, this green is what happens. This green part right here bleeds over, and then it cascades through the entire thing, which I don't want, right? So I definitely want to use something like 160 for this one, and then delete, okay, the background. Okay, that's what I want to do. And I want to kind of go through all of them for a second with you, just to show you how to do this. And again, I recommend you try it out because I think it's good learnings, because for you to appreciate what artists do is a good thing, right? There we go, and delete. Again, you can see that there's some remnants here, right? There's some parts that I can go in And if I was going to clean this up, again, I would go with my delete brush. This is too big, obviously, and I would change it into a square and go down to 1 pixel. And then just, like I said, I'll probably just pick the pixels to get rid of them. It's not that difficult to do if you had the mind to do it, and get rid of these gray pixels one by one. Or if you're lazy like me, you'll increase the tolerance on the inside, right? And it would take care of most of these pixels for you. You see, it's a little bit more cleaned up. It's not quite what I want. Let's go back out. It's not quite what I want, but it's probably close enough. And you can see where the assets come from. There's a couple more islands we can include too if we want some variation in the islands. We're not going to do that today. But you can see that's the problem. The problem is we have an asset, right, that has a problem. It has a problem with the background. We have to figure out how to cut these things out. So I do this, and I'm not going to clean up these ones too much more than this, okay, guys, because I got no time today. But you would go through this and try and do that. Yeah, that's bad. That's not bad. You would go through this and cut out the parts that, I don't want to cut that fine here. So I'm going to go back down to 140, maybe 120 or 100. More. 60 maybe. Yeah, I want that. Because see, there's extra information. It makes the explosion a little nicer, right? And I'll cut that out. There you go. And same thing with this one. That's not bad. I'll cut that out. And that's good. So I've got this stuff. I mean, I probably could clean this up. I'm just lazy. But you've got these explosions that you would cut up yourself, right? And you can go through them. But luckily, I have that data too. So I don't want you to go through it. I mean, it's just us going through it and managing all those explosions. So what I'm going to do, though, I have it in another project that I'm going to drag and drop in here, and then I'm going to put it up on Slack for you guys or GitHub so you have access to it. So yeah, where is it? It's in the other project I've been working on today because I did it already today. Those poor people had to watch me do it, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. So if I go to my sprites, I have big explosion. I call it big explosion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I even produced 8. And I'll talk about 8 in a second. So I'm going to copy these and move them into this. Right? Look at 8. Right? So here's 8. 8 looks like, well, that's wrong, actually. That shouldn't be that way. That should be empty. Haha, no wonder I was having a problem. Wait a minute. Yeah, it is empty. Okay, I don't know why it's showing me that 8. That's weird. That preview is wrong. Okay. But yeah, that's pretty good. So 8 is empty. Why would I make an empty one? Sometimes it solves problems. Because it's empty. It's blank. So what it does is that if you run the whole cycle of animation, blanks it out. It's gone, right? It's a trick. It's a hack, right? And it's not wrong to use with an explosion. I've done it before. It's not the optimal way. Obviously, you want to take the explosion away, but sometimes you need to time it a little differently. Okay, so cool. So we've got this explosion animation that I'm going to share with you now, and I'm going to put it up on GitHub. But let's take a look at the sprites that I've got here. So I've got these sprites, these explosion sprites, and I want to include them in our the stuff we did with Texture Packer, right? Because we had a sprite sheet, right? So here's our mail pilot, and we have a sprite sheet with everything, yeah? Let's see if I can pull that in. So let's do the we'll view, instead of doing this, we'll view details. So this is our stuff, but we don't have a sprite sheet yet. It's called the texture atlas, right? I think that I put that in sprite sheets. Yeah, here's the texture atlas, and here is the texture atlas.json. But guess what? Unluckily for me, I did not include the TPS file for Texture Packer, right? So we're going to do these two things again, and it's good practice for you guys to understand how to put it together. It's going to take 2 seconds. So how do I do it? Well, I pull up Texture Packer, Remember, Texture Packer is a great little tool that I highly recommend. It is a paid tool. It's not free. And you can choose the right export settings. Right now, I'm going to choose the export settings for Create.js or Easel.js, which is right here. And it says update project settings to recommended values. We'll convert them. And now I want to choose the data files. So I want to make sure they go in the right places. So it's going to go into desktop COMP397, and it's going to be assets and sprite sheets. This is the data file. Yeah, I want to definitely replace that data file. And I definitely want to make my texture atlas inside sprite sheet. So I'm going to go back over here, go to COMP397, and go into that assets sprite sheets and replace this one as well. So right now it's empty, but we're going to add them back in. Now remember what we need. We need our buttons, and we need our other assets. So I'm going to go back to the assets from our images. Here's our images. And we definitely don't want to use the background image, but I want to use a couple things. I don't need the back button, but we need the start button and the restart button. So I need to put those back in. So here's my start and restart buttons. I'm just going to drag them, drop them over here. Okay, start and restart. Yay. I also want, instead of plain, okay, I want plain 1, 2, 3. Plain 1, 2, 3. Those are planes. Okay. And then I want the islands. And then I want the cloud. I think I need the bullet. These are all things that were there before, right? Coming out here. And then the explosion. So I'm going to go from explosion 1 to explosion 8. Now the great thing is you can test these things out. So if you go to Texture Packer, and if I zoom in, right, and I see the explosion, this is where the explosions are kind of stored. I can do an animation preview, right, on any of the sprites I select. So let's say I select these sprites here, right, and I want to do an animation preview. I can click animation preview, and you'll see what the explosion looks like. That's what it looks like. Okay, so it kind of does this explosion. Boom, boom, like that. That's what it's going to be looking like, right? Frame-based animation, and the animation, what it's going to do is it's showing, how basically it's going to be fast enough, so it's going to look really, really quick. It should look pretty good. All right, cool. I've got this. Now there's some other settings because we didn't save this before that I want to change. So yeah, it tells me some updates. There's scaling variants. I can go with different kinds of scales that I can apply, right? So if I want to change the scale type, I can also go into advanced settings, which I highly recommend since we're doing this kind of stuff. You can trim names if you want to. You can prepend folders, add a texture path if you want as well. You can change the type of PNG that you have, right? And as well as the pixel format I like. The maximum size as well, and the size constraints. For example, if I want to make this power of 2, which I recommend, always try and make your sprite sheet power of 2. It's a much faster way to load. And Easel.js likes power of 2, and so does C++ and a lot of other frameworks, because it works better by loading textures that are power of 2. Okay, so I recommend power of 2. You can change the maximum size if you want. Scale mode is smooth. We can also make it fast or whatever if I need to scale anything. I'm not going to scale anything right now. The algorithm, it says max rex. There's also basic, okay? That's how it packs everything. Basic. Sort by best, right? Sort by name. I definitely want to sort by name. I want to store my objects by name, right? So that they're all packed together. It's easier sometimes, right? Sort order ascending, pack best, right? Pack fast, pack good, right? I'm leaving it at pack best. Detects identical sprites, right? If I have more than one sprite, we don't have that. And I can change my trim margins right now. I can change my trim margins to 0. if I don't want a trim margin, right? If I want to, I can increase the trim margin so I have more spaces between my sprites like this. And sometimes this is really good for multi-sprite animations where you don't have to make them as tight as this. One is just fine, though, if I want to add one. Okay, custom divisor, pack with the same layout for my normal maps if I have any normal maps, right? If I have a normal map, I can create a normal map. And for those people, does anyone know what a normal map is? Anyone know what a normal map is? A normal map, what it actually does is it creates another layer that you can layer on top of your sprites to give them the illusion of having depth. It's kind of a neat thing, right? Usually used for 3D, not 2D, right? Now, in this case, if I scroll through, it doesn't look like my normal map data is really working out. Like, there's nothing in here. There's no normal map. Just taking the sprite and converting it to normal. But however, what I will do, if we're going to use a normal map, it says pack with same layout, auto detect if there's a normal map. And I can definitely create an object. If I'm going to set my object, it's going to be inside here. So let's save it as text.strat list, like how it is right here, text.strat list, like it says. And usually the normal maps, if you're going to create something like that, which I will create it, but we're not going to use it, it's got an N like this and save. That's what it does. Okay, so we're ready to go. I think we've got a good stable layout, right? By the way, I can also force it squared. That's one thing I like to do too. Even though there's extra data, the great thing about making it square is it gives us the ability to add stuff later on, right? It doesn't change these things too much later. Okay, unless they become out of, I don't know, we add stuff that's different names, like small explosion. Small explosion would come before start button, so that would move, right? Okay, so if we're ready to go, let's publish the data. So we're going to publish the Spreadsheet. It's published, right? Press OK. And let's save our project. So I'm going to save our project. And I'm going to save it in the same spot. Instead of where I had it before, I'm going to go into the desktop and go to COMP397 and into my assets folder, into my Spreadsheets. And I'm going to save this as mail pilot. So that way we can preserve all these settings we just made. So I don't have to do all this work again. Save. Cool, we can close this off now. And if I go back into assets, Spreadsheets, you notice that there is a couple things. This normal map, I want to show you what this normal map looks like. Right now it is completely blank, right? It just, this weird mauve color, right? Because our sprites did not create a normal map of our sprites. Our texture packer didn't do it right. You'd have to set it up. I just put it in there just so you could see it. Okay, what it looks like. And what it would do is take these and look at the dark areas of the sprite and then invert them. And so it add kind of areas of darkness and color, right? That's what it was. Okay, so that's what this part is. Great. Let's put all this. What I'm going to do for now for you guys is I'm going to take my assets folder and I'm going to take my images and sprites just to make it easier for you guys. And I'm going to just make a zip folder out of them. I'm going to put them in as a assets.zip. I'm going to drag and drop it onto Slack so you have the same things I have. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time downloading it. It'll be up on GitHub later on too. But it's just easier for us. That's the wrong one. That's my D&D game. It'll be just easier for us to get going with this stuff. So I'm just trying to drag and drop this stuff. So here we are. So here's the assets. I'm going to take this assets.zip and just drag it into here for you guys. Okay. So you should have it on Slack now if you look there. Okay. Excellent. Now, how does this affect my game? So if I actually go into my Visual Studio Code here, and if I look at assets, I have a problem. Well, I have my Spreadsheet here. Here's my Spreadsheet. I have my Spreadsheet. I have my text.strat.list.json, which is all this now. Oh, man. Look at all this crap. Woohoo. And guess what it gave me? Big explosion, frames 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, island, plane 1, 2, 3. This is wrong. It's nice what Texture Packer did, but we need to make some changes to this little thing, which I'm going to do with you right now, and then I'm going to put it up, the changes up on GitHub. Okay, so before I actually import this stuff into my code has changed. I can't run my program anymore because my asset map, my texture atlas is different. I know that I need to get rid of these last values because they're zeros. I can't get rid of that in Texture Packer. So these two last values, all the three of them actually, should all be 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to kind of zero the first one out like this, right? 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to take the last part of this part up to here and just replace. Unfortunately, there's no quicker way of doing this. Although I like to say that there would be like an alt replace, like a mega replace, like one of these. I don't think it works like that in Visual Studio Code. So kind of do one of those. And bear with me while I do this, so that way you guys have what I have. I'll just put this up on GitHub in a second. So again, what I told you was right. What this does is it provides offsets and the center point for my sprites, which I don't want. So I'm just going to replace these last values. And this is before I copy it back into my code, by the way. Instead of me doing it manually, because I can figure it out manually. I don't need Texture Packer to do it, right? I can figure this out because I can go through it manually and then figure out the locations of my sprite and the width and the height and make my own texture map without Texture Packer. It just takes a lot longer. You have to look at your atlas, and we have no time to play like that. And I don't recommend. I think it's a waste of time. All right, so this is one thing we need to do when we change this up. Obviously, this is another thing. TextureAtlas.ping, that's not correct. If you look at the original one in my game.ts file, so if I look at my game.ts file, and what I'll do is I'll split screen for you guys so you can see it. So this one will be my game.ts file, and this one will be Texture Atlas, okay? And if I just won't show this one anymore, okay? So you can see the two things side by side. Okay, so if you look at this side, this is my code. And if you look at the code that's happened, look how it changed, how much it changed. Like it's totally different positions, right? Between this one and this one, okay? But this is going to be remaining the same. So this part here, before I port it over, is going to be the same thing. I mean, I already have the code. Why would I kind of reinvent the wheel, right? So that's the new location, right? Because I want to kind of change it. So I'm preparing to copy across my files. That's what I'm doing, okay? Notice that this changed, the order changed for all this, bullet, cloud, island, plane, restart button, start button, and the frame count changed because there's more frames now, right? So these are all different. Now, my code doesn't care. As soon as I set this up properly, it's going to know what plane is and everything else. However, there isn't a plane anymore. It's plane 1, 2, 3. How do I fix that? Well, we need a little bit of documentation. Create.js. So if I go to easel.js docs, okay, and now if you notice easel.js 1.00, we're not at 1.00, but it's very similar to what we did. So if I go to the docs, and what I want to do here is I want to look at my sprite sheet. So all this is the same. They just added some additional things. Let's go to my sprite sheet here. So under sprite sheet, it actually shows me a couple of hints, right? Notice what it does. It says this is the frame layout. If you want to understand the frame layout for the sprite sheet, it's width, height, count, how many, the regx, reg values, spacing, and margins. You can add all this to each of the frames. I don't need all this stuff. Here's what frames looks like. I could do this. And then here's what animation looks like. I can do this. I can also do this, animations. Okay. Here's walk. Here's shoot. Here's the speed of the animations. This is important, right? So these are options. These are options for how I can set up my animations a little differently. Okay? Frame rate, you can put the frame rate in there, and so on. So how do I set up my animations to be like this? Well, I know that big explosion is what I wanted to call it. and it's going to go from frame 0 to frame 7. All right, look, it's right here, frame 0 to frame 7. And it looks like this: explosion, frames, open bracket, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what I want, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take away this, kill all this stuff. And now my big explosion is going to have frames from 0 to 1. Oh, I got to make this white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I missed 5. There we go. And that's just frames. Let's just put another line in here so you can see what it looks like, right? So I can make my big explosion, this big explosion thing here. Okay, let's go put this over here, and we'll make this like what it looks like in the picture over here, right? So we'll put this part just to make it so that you can see what I'm doing, right? Here's my frames. And what I want to do is I can specify the speed. So right now, if I go from frames, I can say, well, guess what? My speed, right, is equal to 1. 1 means 100%. I may vary that later, right? And why is that? Because I can say I can have the speed of how many frames per, what's the frame count that I'm going to move through for my explosion. So I have 7-frame animation, but I'm running at 60 frames per second. Think about this: 60 frames per second. I'm running my plane animation. And I have 8 frames. How many times is it going to repeat that? Many times, right? Like maybe 6 times 8, 6, 7, almost 7 times, right? 7 times 8 is 56, 7 times, right? And a bit. But what if it's too fast? I don't want it to repeat 7 times. I only want it to repeat 3.5 times. Then I can put this at my speed as 0.5, and then it'll only repeat 3.5 times. That means it'll add frames in between the changes to slow down my flipping, my page flipping for my animation. That's what it does. So it's kind of a really cool, intuitive system, the way it works. I need to do it here for now. I'm going to leave it at 1. And I'm also going to do it for my plane animation, because I don't have plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. I only have plane. So now my plane is 11, 12, and 13. That's what it is. So I'm going to get rid of these and make this plane. And just space this down here, just like we did last time. Right? And then add in a speed. I'll put the 11, 12, and 13 in there. A second. Speed is 1. Now, we'll see if we need to change that. And then I can say 11, 12, and 13. Now, if you notice the example, you can actually call the same frame twice. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. So you can call, you're defining the animation. So you can actually cause a cyclic animation or some kind of weird thing where you go up and then you come back down, right? Or you start and you go forward and then you go back, or something weird, right? You can define your animation the way you want, or you can skip frames. Look, it skips from 1, 4, 5, 6 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then you can also declare what's the next animation you want to play when this one's done. That's pretty cool. So I can say, well, my next animation is walk. So I shoot. I go 1, 4, 5, 6. I shoot, and then I do my walk animation: 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Right, which is kind of cool. So I don't have a next animation for my plane. My plane's always going to be on its own. My big explosion, there's no animation. There's no next animation for this one either, right? It's not going to transform into something else, right? So this is the big explosion. Notice I called it big explosion because I have a small explosion that I'm also going to have, right? Like I talked about. So small explosion, bullet, I have bullet, right? Cloud, I have cloud. Island, I have island. Plane, I have plane. Restart button and start button. I think I'm ready to go, guys. Right? Now, I need to take this file here, the entire thing, copy it, and I'm going to replace everything from about here, right here, all the way down, and add a semicolon. Okay. Now we're good. All right, we've replaced the frames, we've got our animations and everything else, right? I'm going to save this part, and If I'm right, we have nothing to do. The plane should start flipping its, it should start showing the animation right away. Let's check it and see if it works. So I'm going to go and first, I need to transpile this, right? So I'm going to save it, which transpiles automatically, right? Say it's transpiles to the next one. And to check that, because I know people have forgotten, if I go to game.js, you should see the new way it's being done, right? So it's transpiled. Now I have to go to my, here inside my command prompt and go light-server. And what this will do is we'll kick off the server, and we know it's okay because now it's loading the new sprite sheet. If I click on start, it's hard to see, but it's actually spinning. Now here's a question for you. Do you think it's spinning too fast? I think it is. It's going so fast back and forth, you can't tell. So a speed of 1 in our case, right, is incorrect. So we're going to adjust the speed. So we're going to make the plane speed, because it's only 3 frames of animation. And we're running at 60 frames per second. That means it's looping through those animations like a ton of times in a second. Way too fast. Let's drop this right down to like something like, I don't know, something we can see, like 0.25. I wanted to show you this so you understand. All right, so now let's see what it looks like. So I saved it. I'm going to go back to my command prompt. I'm going to run my light server again. Okay, let's see if that works. Let's see if there's a change. So start. Yeah, now you can see it. Look. Yay. Right? So that's what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you how to do that piece. So the animation actually is very intuitive. Why? Why does this work automatically? Because we've already done all the work before we left. When we converted these things to sprites and I started using the text strat list the way I did, I was ready to go with animations. I already prepared you for animations. All we had to do is just understand how they work, right? So if you think about this, right, I've got a bunch of frames. Each one of these lines, it's an array. It's an array of arrays. It's an array of number arrays, right? In JavaScript, that's what it is, an array of number arrays. And each number array is a frame. That's what it is. If I actually hover over here, it'll show you that it's a 2-dimensional array. Frames is a 2-dimensional number array. An array of numbers, 2-dimensional array of numbers, like a table. That's what we're actually seeing. It's a table with rows and columns, right? And we have each row is a frame, right? And each frame we're calling upon to play that particular animation. Now the bullet, the reason why this is still an animation, but it's a single frame animation. So whenever we play the bullet, we show the bullet, it's only a single frame animation. It's still playing the animation, but just only 1 frame. Okay, same thing with the other ones, with cloud and island. That means if I want to make some weird island with smoke coming out of it or something like that, I don't know, I could do it, right? And have a bunch of frames for the, the island showing smoke and then no smoke, right? A bunch of times. I'm not going to do that, but I'd rather use particle systems for that. But this is pretty cool, right? That's the way it works. So it's kind of the rudiments of animation for Create.js. I think it's a great place to stop. We've got this. I'm going to put this up on GitHub now. So I'm going to go to my GitHub, and these are all the changes I made. I'm going to say added animations to project, right? I'm going to click this little button here. Oh, yeah. How about we stage everything first? And then we'll do that. So I staged it, and then I'll run it. And then I'll go here, and I'll push. And this will push all my changes up to GitHub. Now, the GitHub that I'm pushing to is me. Unfortunately, it didn't go to Centennial. It went to me. So remember, for the GitHub link, I'm going to give you this to you. I mean, I forked it on my on Centennial. But if you notice, whenever you fork something, it doesn't really go. So if I go to github.com And if I go back to Centennial just for a second, so you see what it is. Here's Centennial, right? Notice that I have this forked repository, right? Is this forked repository have the latest version? Look, it says this branch is 6 commits behind, right, master. Okay? I'm just telling you so you understand. This one is not the latest. Not the latest version. Okay. And we can check later on in the break if it's possible for you to fork it, like fork this thing and or keep it up to date. I'm pretty sure it won't do it. You have to actually do some extra work to get that done. All right. Okay. Any questions before we take a short break? Because we need a short break before we do the next animation. All right. Let's take maybe 15 minutes. Maybe some people can go across and get coffees or whatever, and then we'll continue.